creatives, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are in my studio, so welcome. And this time in this tutorial we're going to be painting this lovely Japan inspired cat wearing a kimono with different Japan inspired patterns. If you don't know me, I'm Irina. I'm an illustrator from the UK. I do a lot of free tutorials. I also do classes, I do courses, and I also create my own Procreate brushes. You can visit my website and check these all things out. Right, what we will need for this tutorial? We will need a few important things. First of all, we will need the 3 essential brushes. It's my own brushes that I created. There are 5 of them, and you can download them from my website, www.busymay.com/freebies. So if you go on the website, go to the freebies gallery, you can download those brushes from there, absolutely free. You will need to provide your email address, which I'm going to be using for sending you lovely newsletters approximately once a month. No spam, no commercial bombarding with things, so you don't need to be worried. If you are already a subscriber, you just log into the guest area of the website and just download whatever you need to download. Also, as a free resource, I provide the mini color palette for this cat. It's a Japan-inspired palette as well. You don't have to use those colors, but I will be explaining my steps based on those colors from the palette that I provide. And finally, I provide a stamp brush which features this cat sketch. So you don't have to sketch it yourself, so you can just stamp it on the canvas. But again, if you feel like sketching, go ahead and sketch your cat. I also will be using the pattern brushes that you can purchase on my website. And by the way, for this tutorial watcher, there is a special discount code, Japan20. Just enter it at the checkout so you can purchase the brushes with a nice discount. I'll link this down below. But as always, you don't have to purchase anything. You can use the pattern brushes that come default in Procreate, and I will explain which ones and where to get them from in the next part of this video. So stay with me, prepare your Procreate, prepare your Apple Pencil, and let's begin. Alright guys, in this part I'm gonna show you like a brief overview of my Japanese brushes, Japan inspired pattern brushes. However, as always, you don't need to use exactly them, and in the end of this part I'm gonna show you brushes, the free brushes in Procreate, the exact ones that you can use instead, and their default Procreate brushes, which means that no additional purchase is required. However, if you like my brushes, remember there is 20% off, especially for this tutorial watchers. So the brushes I'm gonna use, I've created them. It's the set of 40 Japan inspired pattern brushes, and I've divided them into 4 different groups. Basically, it's geometrical brushes, nature brushes, which is like nondescript, different types of natural objects like trees, leaves, etc. Living beings brushes, which feature animals and birds of different types. And finally, the next group is floral brushes. Basically speaks for itself, it's flowers. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of them. So for example, from geometry group, Kira stripes, for example. So you can reduce the size of them if you need to, if you deal with like smaller objects, or like this type. So you see they are not just patterns, there is like some texture going on there. You can always play around with the size of them, see like different movement direction. So yeah, so that's just geometry. Now let's have a look at nature brushes. They're different. See, like they have different brush stroke weight. Like for example, some of them are really deep saturated, like these ones, for example, and some of them are really delicate, like this one, for example, like almost lacy type. So that was nature inspired brushes. So I'm gonna also show you living beings, because that's been like all-time favorite of my customers. See, horses, like different animals here, see, like Japan inspired. And just like I really like those monkey ones. Look, it's quite nice, so whichever you prefer. And finally floral brushes, which are quite, see, for example, roses, or it's like some other type of flowers, and like a little bit more saturated, this type. So yeah, basically they are what they are, pattern brushes. You can create seamless patterns, or you can apply them to your illustrations, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do now in this tutorial. So let's begin. Now guys, as I said before, you don't have to use the Japan inspired patterns, the ones that you can purchase it on my website. If you want to use default Procreate brushes, I'm gonna show you. So for example, see in this artwork, I've used 3 different types of brushes which come default as Procreate, and it means that you don't need to buy them, you just use. So if you open vintage group, you can find this Myrtle brush, and this is exactly this one. In the same vintage group, there is also Flower Power. It's this one, I used it here. And this very last one comes in Textures group, and it's called Victorian. So I know that these pattern brushes that come with Procreate are not necessarily looking like Japanese patterns, obviously, especially the Victorian one. However, guys, when you apply it to the whole sort of like illustration, you still, because of other elements here, you still get this Japanese vibe. So by all means, try them out, use them, and share your artwork with me. As always, I would be lovely to see. So yeah, and let's move on to the next part. Right, so in this part, we're gonna start preparing the canvas and sketching. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna press this plus sign in the corner of the Procreate app, and the size I'm gonna work in is the screen size, and probably I'm gonna turn my iPad this way because it's kind of like a more portrait rather than landscape. And first of all, we're gonna prepare our canvas. So as we discussed before, to make our illustration look like authentic Japanese, what we're gonna do, so presumably you've downloaded the PNG file with the canvas, which is called Japanese canvas, which comes with freebies for this tutorial. And wherever you saved it, you now gonna add it to our new canvas. So if you press on this wrench icon and insert a photo, in my case it's going to be a photo because I saved it in the photos, and if you saved it on the iCloud or something, for you it's going to be insert a file. I've added my canvas to the blank one, and I'm just going to stretch it a little bit to make sure that it covers the entire area. in case you want to add some other elements. By the way, what's important, the file, the canvas this time comes as a PNG file because it's half transparent. So if it was JPEG, you wouldn't be able to see through. I'm gonna show you exactly what I mean. So I've created a new layer. You don't need to do it just yet. I'm doing it just to show you. So I'm gonna drag it underneath my PNG canvas layer, and I'm just gonna grab any brush and I'm gonna show you. See, I'm drawing and you can see through because this file, it's not solid, that's why it's PNG. In preparation of our canvas, what else is important to do? You can see that at the moment the blending mode is set to normal once you've dropped your image on your artboard. It's normal, but we're gonna change it into multiply. It's gonna intensify the color underneath, so you see, and it's also gonna show this texture of the canvas, and that's exactly what we are looking for. And yeah, that's it. And we're gonna leave it as it is. I'm gonna clear this layer because we're gonna paint on it. And let's drop our sketch. As you know, I don't use sketch as part of the artwork. I use it as some sort of auxiliary element. So I'm just gonna drop it on the canvas using the stamp brush, which hopefully you've downloaded from the freebies section. If you don't feel like sketching yourself, so use the stamp brush. However, if you feel like sketching yourself, I encourage you to do so. I'm not going to show you exactly how to sketch the cat because I want this tutorial to be focused on using pattern brushes and using some effect to create silky fabric. But if you feel compelled to sketch it, by all means do that because it's going to develop your muscle memory, it's going to encourage you to create, it's going to make this creative muscle of yours work harder. So please do so. But for this tutorial, I'm going to use the stamp brush that I've provided. Our canvas is almost ready, and I'm just going to quickly go through the layer stack with you so you don't get confused with anything. Let's open it and see. We've got the background color. We've got an empty layer on top of the background color. That's the layer we're gonna paint on. Let's actually rename it. We've got our texture, and we've got the very top layer where we're gonna put our sketch, so we don't get confused because we're gonna switch it off after that. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the sketch stamp on it. So for this, I'm gonna take my cat stamp brush, which comes with the set, and the color I'm gonna use is the darkest one, but as always it doesn't matter because we're gonna get rid of the sketch layer later on once our illustration is ready. So what I'm gonna do, as always, I'm gonna just stamp our cat in the middle of the canvas, and of course I'm gonna stretch it, so make sure that you choose uniform, not freeform, so you don't distort your sketch. And I'm gonna stretch it, however not too much. I'm just gonna maybe stretch it like this because I'm gonna add some elements like cherry blossom flowers, a little bit of twigs. You might also want to add some Fujiyama background, or this authentically Japanese, you know, like purple and blue sky, like different beautiful ideas, you know, of Japanese landscape, trees element, etc. So in my case, in this tutorial, I'm gonna add cherry blossom twigs, so that's why I'm gonna leave a little bit of room for maneuver around. And as always, I'm gonna reduce the opacity of this layer down, visible enough but not visible enough to interfere with the colors. Our canvas and sketch are ready, and let's start mapping the colors. Alright guys, so as I said before, the brushes we're gonna use is BCMA Free Essential Set. If you've done my tutorial before, you've probably got them. If you haven't, quickly go on the website in the description below and download your free set of brushes. What we're gonna do, color mapping. We're gonna put some colors on the main shapes of our cat here. Let's start with the cat's head and the paw. So for this, I'm gonna take Essential Filler Big Brush, and the color I'm gonna use is from our Japan mini palette, is this sort of like beigey color. Let's see, yeah, quite happy with that. And I'm gonna reduce the size. The opacity will be 100% because I want this layer to be solid. And I'm just gonna start filling our cat's head with the color. On a new layer, I'm gonna add the hair color. Again, I'm going to take the Essential Filler Big Brush, but keeping the opacity to 100%. And the color I'm going to use for the hair is this dark brown color. And I'm just going to fill the hair bun and the fringe. So next I'm gonna fill the eye whites with white color. For that I'm gonna use the Essential Filler Small Brush, and the color I'm gonna use is this almost snow white color. The opacity 100%, the size is probably slightly reduced. Okay, and the other one. Make sure that you create the eyes layers on a separate layer, because we're going to be using the irises of the eyes attached to this white layer. And that's precisely what we're going to do now. Creating a new layer, I'm going to create a clipping mask, and using the same Essential Filler Small Brush, and using this again dark brown color, I'm just gonna slightly. I love the fluffy edge to my illustrations, and I find that when you actually use fluffy edge, like of different degree of fluffiness to different objects of your illustration, it kind of unifies it, it kind of brings the elements together. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah. So I filled the eye with the color, the iris of the eye, but you see there is a slight rim of white like border, so I'm gonna go around with my Essential Big Brush just to get rid of it. See, this fluffy edge is probably not great for the iris, that's why I'm just gonna grab the Essential Sketch Brush, because its edge is slightly sharper. And reducing the size, I'm just gonna go around the iris with the same color, obviously a dark brown color, to make the edge of the iris just slightly sharper. It's actually really nice to alternate different edges. Some of them can be fluffy, some of them can be sharper. So I think I'm quite happy for the eye to be, for the iris to be a little bit sharper. So on a new layer, creating a clipping mask, I'm just going to repeat the process for the other eye. So I'm just going to hold down my pencil to my iPad surface to create a circle. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to fill it with the color. Oops. Yeah, that's better. And I'm just going to check that there is no white border between the colors. So just making sure that it's all nice. And just for the sake of keeping fewer number of layers, I'm quite happy. I'm probably not going to change anything. I'm just going to pinch these layers together. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new layer where I'm going to draw this little heart-shaped nose. So I'm going to grab the Essential Sketch brush because I want it to be slightly sharp. I don't want a fluffy nose. And I'm just going to color in this love heart of our cat's nose with this pink color. There are actually 2 pink colors in the palette, so feel free to choose either of them. They're quite close in shades. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And I'm gonna pinch the eyes and the nose together just to reduce the number of layers to make the file lighter. And yeah, I think our cat is ready. The colors are ready. They are mapped, and now we've got this kimono layers to fill, and we're going to be filling them one by one. Remember, it's very important to keep them every kimono layer on a separate layer in our Procreate layer stack. The reason being is that we're going to be attaching separate clipping masks to apply different patterns and effects to each of the 3 layers of the kimono, so make sure you keep them on separate. Later on, you can always flatten the layers together once you are sure that you're not going to change anything anymore, that you're not going to alternate anything. You just flatten them together. But while we are in the process, please make sure that every kimono part is on a separate layer. So let's begin filling in with color the layers. So I've created a new layer. Obviously, the brush I've picked is the Essential big brush, and the color I'm going to use is this darkest blue color. And I've reduced the size of my brush as well, and I'm just gonna outline. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And now I'm going to teach you a little trick which you might not know. When you create curves in your artwork, in your illustration, you obviously can rely on your hand to be steady. Like, for example, see, I'm just going to try and follow along this curve on my sketch. And sometimes I do manage to keep my hand relatively steady. So this curve is actually quite decent in comparison to what I usually produce. But by no means it's perfect, of course. But to help you, there is this function in the brush settings called stabilization. So what you want to do, you just want to increase stabilization of your brush. In this case, I would say 60% or so. And look what it does. It's your helping hand. It's going to help you create a much, much smoother curve. It basically does the job for you. There you go. Voila. The curve is ready. And keeping the same stabilization value, I'm just going to create the outline, the curvy outlines of the top layer of our kimono. Yeah, you see this when you fill with color. Sometimes you get this color separation, but don't worry about that. We're just going to fill them in later. At the moment, I just want to fill in with color all these like curvy parts of the top layer of the cat's kimono. And I'm not too worried about this part, this edge, because it's going to be covered with the following layer, with the middle layer. So I'm just going to draw whatever, not worrying too much about the curve. And I'm just going to join these lines together, making sure that the borders are created for our color. And I'm just going to fill in with this dark blue color, a little bit on the back of our cat. Just gonna fill it with blue as well. I'm quite happy with that. And to get rid of this white edges, I'm just gonna grab the Essential Filler Big Brush, and I'm gonna go around this white edge of the top layer and make sure there is no white border left. Now on the new layer, I'm gonna create the next part of our kimono, the middle one, and I'm gonna use the brighter blue color, like almost royal blue, and I'm gonna repeat the exact same process as before. And finally, next layer, and the color I'm gonna use is this sort of like dusty blue. So you see our kimono is basically 3 different shades of blue, which I think is quite nice. But I also encourage you strongly, guys, to experiment with different colors, because you see, like if you look at different Japanese pieces of art and painting and patterns and whatever you get your inspiration from, you can see that they used a lot of like this muted red color and like sage green and olive type green colors. They're all muted, not too bright, so I think it would be also nice to mix and match different color combinations together in your palette. So yeah, our layers of the cat's kimono are done, and I can see that the paw is sort of behind the top layer of the fabric, and we want it to be on top of it. So there are basically 2 ways to do that. I mean, probably more. One of the ways is just to grab the eraser tool and rub it out. But I'm just gonna go an easier way, easier in my opinion. I'm gonna take the selection tool, I'm gonna use the freehand option, and I'm gonna select the paw, because at the moment it's on the same layer with the head, and I'm gonna swipe with 3 fingers, cut and paste, and I'm just gonna drag the paw layer on top of all the fabric layers. That's it, done. And just clean it up a little bit. Just maybe clean a little bit of the fur on top of the cat's head. And the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna work on different elements in our layers just to make them stand out a little bit more, just to make them a little bit more finished, a little bit more elaborated. And that's before we even start filling these layers with pattern and the silk effect. So see you in the next chapter. Right guys, in this part I'm gonna show you how to make the cat's face and hair and the paw just a tiny bit more interesting, because look, I'm not gonna dwell too much because to be honest, when it comes to fluffy characters, I can spend hours adding something, trying different textures, trying different colors. But in this case, the point of this tutorial is focus more on the fabric and the pattern. So that's why I'm just going to briefly show you how to do certain things. But you see, I don't want to leave it like this because it looks a little bit unfinished. So we're going to bring it a little bit to a different level. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of the sketch almost to invisible lines, but I still need certain guidance. And what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm gonna work a little bit with the cat's fur on a new layer attached as a clipping mask to our layer with the head. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab my fluffy essential texturizer brush, and I'm gonna choose this like a little bit darker beige color. I'm gonna increase the size. See, this brush is quite big. I'm gonna reduce the opacity a little bit, and just with very, very gentle moves, see, you can see the colors coming through. I'm just gonna randomly, not having a purpose of creating lights and shades, I'm just gonna randomly add touches of colors here and there. The reason I do that is because the effect reminds me of, like, you know, when you paint with granulated watercolors on the paper, it kind of like falls apart into different shades, like for example green and blue, or blue and brown. So I really like this effect, and that's why I'm trying, eternally trying to achieve it on the digital work of mine. So that's why randomly, that's why it's not lights and shades, but random additions of color. So now I'm gonna choose this greenish beige, and maybe with essential shader, I'm just gonna again add a little bit of color and texture here and there. I always try and play with different blending modes. See, I think multiply maybe too harsh. I'm gonna leave it at darken mode. And the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just accentuate the tips of the ears a little bit on a new layer as a clipping mask. This time I'm deliberately going to change the blending mode to multiply because I want the tips of the ears slightly darker. I'm going to use the Essential Filler Small Brush, and with reduced opacity to around 50 something %, and the size maybe 30 odd %. I'm just gonna, don't forget to bring stabilization back to normal, because it just won't let you do some fluffy things. So I'm just gonna add this little tip here. See, when I want more pigment to come through, I press a little bit more with my pencil on the iPad surface. When I don't want to, when I want a fluffy edge, I just leave it, you know, like it didn't make the pressure much lighter. However, go ahead, you can always use the smudge tool, like for example with Essential Texturizer. You can always smudge the ear a little bit. What I'm also gonna do, since on the same layer, see, this ear is sort of like turned away, so I'm not gonna do the like the inner part, because it's just going to be this kind of sort of like outer looking ear. But since I'm on this layer doing sort of like darker things, I'm just gonna accentuate the head a little bit more. See, like that it's outline, that's more visible, that there is just slight separation between the ear and the head, and I'm just gonna darken this part a little bit. Yeah, just like that. But again, no dwelling too much on it. And again, since I'm here on this like multiple layer, I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm gonna increase the size of the brush and reduce the opacity. I'm still on this Essential Filler Small Brush, and I'm just gonna add this nice outline of the eyes, just to make them stand out a little bit more on the face. And obviously I'm just gonna fluffify it. Fluffify? Is it even a word? If it's not, I'll be the proud inventor of the new word in the English language, fluffify. Yeah, so that's it. Basically, that's this layer done. Next thing, I'm just gonna create a new layer, clipping mask. Again, the blending mode, multiply. And probably with the essential texturizer, I'm gonna add even more darker color. So I'm gonna grab this sort of like greenish blue, and I'm just gonna reduce the size drastically, and I'm just gonna add even darker parts, so I'm gonna blend in. I always feel like these transitions from like really light to really dark work quite nicely. Guys, deliberately not dwelling on it, because honestly, if it was just me enjoying doing the illustrations, I would be sitting here for absolute ages. But I'm not gonna do that. I'll leave it to you to basically work on your cat as much as you want. And I'll add a little bit of darker color to make the eyes stand out a little bit more on the face. See, like almost like eyeshadows, which to be honest I quite like as well on my animals. Eyeshadows, of course. Why wouldn't an animal wear a makeup? And yeah, just a little bit here and there. See, the eyes already, look how the eyes are staring at you. Look, perfect. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add this rosy cheeks, which I always add to my animals. For that, I'm going to use Essential Filler Big Brush. I'm going to use 100% of opacity, and I'm going to increase the size and see how it's going to work. So I'm going to grab this sort of like gentle pink color. Yeah, I think that's perfect. The size and the opacity are just right. And I'm just going to add the little rosy cheeks. Don't want it to kind of overlap too much. Let's switch the sketch off. You can always, again, like smudge tool is your friend. You can always grab your smudge tool and see, like go around the edge to make sure that it's a little bit more blended in. Yeah. Quite happy with that. Next thing I'm gonna do on the face is I'm gonna create a new layer on top of the eyes layer, because I just want this like give the cat this sort of like Japanese makeup wings, you know, with a dark some dark shades. So I'm gonna take this black, almost see like it's like purplish black color, and I'm gonna grab the Essential Sketch Brush, and I'm gonna increase the stabilization to make sure that my wings are nice and smooth. And I'm just gonna increase the size because I want them to be quite thick. And you see with the motion, so I'm gonna start basically that's what we're gonna do, but only on the eye. I'm just gonna create those little arches on top of the eyes, and same on the other one. Increase the size a little bit. Now I'm going to reduce the size and just over it a little bit more. Okay. Now, next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create this little lines. See, like if we switch the sketch back on, see these? For that, I'm just gonna create a new layer, turn the blending mode to multiply, and oops, I'm gonna grab probably this color. See, like it's the third on the second row, third color from the right. I'm going to reduce the size of my essential sketch brush, and I'm just going to add these lines. And next thing I would do, like as an absolute basic on our cat's face, I'm gonna create a new layer, turn the blending mode to multiply, and with the essential sketch, with the reduced size, maybe reduced opacity, I'm just gonna add, I don't know, I hope you can see that, this tiny strokes on the cat's face, because without additional texture, the cat looks just a tiny bit flat. Let's make sure that stabilization is reduced, so we have more like free hand here. And now on the new layer with the lighter color, with the same brush, with the same size, I'm just gonna add some lighter strokes. See, just to give it a little bit of fur. Yeah, I think now I'm gonna increase the opacity of the brush, maybe a little bit of a size, and I'm just gonna add whiskers, because you know it's a cat after all. So I'm gonna move the cheeks maybe underneath a little bit so it doesn't overlap. So we'll probably need to bring these whiskers on top of the kimono layer. Just fluff up the sharp ends. Just maybe a little bit of dots. Guys, not gonna do much more about that. So the only thing I'm gonna do to finish off this this part is to work a little bit on the hair. Gonna try and keep it basic. So clipping mask, the blending mode is turned to normal, and let's give the hair a little bit of a highlight. So I'm gonna grab this color, second from the left on the top row, and I'm just gonna reduce with essential shader. I'm going to reduce the size quite drastically to 2%, and I'm just going to add a little bit of hair highlights. And now I'm going to take essential sketch brush with the reduced opacity. I'm just, oh, that's a little bit too vivid. I'm just going to add a little bit of like the hairlines, outlines, just to indicate that it's hair. And let's add some darker parts. new layer, clipping mask, multiply, and let's take the essential small brush and the same color we used for the actual here. I'm just gonna separate these two parts from each other. I'm just gonna add a little bit of darker shades and fluffify them in the hair. I see, like, I think I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna grab the Essential Filler small brush, just gonna tidy her hair a little bit. Yeah, I think that's slightly better. Let's maybe move the whole bun just slightly down. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And guys, like, before I end this part, I wanted to show you like what you can do when you literally like really work on the cat's head, like what results you can achieve. See, for example, on this one, I kind of really added some like really vivid eyeshadows, a little bit of pink in the corner of the ear, a little bit of white on the face. So just, yeah, go ahead and work a little bit more on your kitty, a little bit of dark on the nose. And the last thing that reminds me of that we've not done is the paw. I'm gonna create a clipping mask, multiply blending mode, and with the Essential Filler small brush, I'm gonna choose this color, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of definition to the paw. Just tiny bit. And I decided to add a little bit of this white on the face in the very last moment. Right, guys, in this chapter we're gonna work on our layers of fabric, and I recommend that you combine your cat's head in a separate group, maybe the paw in a separate group, rename it. So you don't get confused, because right now we're gonna focus on these 3 layers, our blue ones, and that's the point of this tutorial. So let's start with the top one. So first of all, you can see that it's sort of like it needs a little bit more depth, because this part, this one is the foreground, this one is a little bit on the background. See, like this one. So I suggest that we do it just slightly darker shade to separate these two. And for this, I'm gonna create a new layer. I'm gonna clip it as a mask to this top blue layer, and that's the very first thing I'm gonna do is to take the Essential Filler big small brush. I'm gonna grab exactly same color as this layer, but if I change if I do that, obviously you can't see anything, despite the fact that you can see that I've drawn something on the layer. However, if you change the blending mode to multiply, you can see immediately how it's working. I might actually experiment with different blending modes. So I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. Actually, I'm not really sure if I'm going to, yeah, that's all right. So I'm going to reduce the size of it and very gently see the color on the multiply blending mode turns into almost black, which is okay. So I'm just gently cover this part with the color. Maybe just rub a little bit out, just like this, see? And exactly same thing I'm gonna do with this one, just to show on the illustration that to create this effect that these layers are a little bit behind on the background. And that's it, that's all. Let's actually, before I flatten those two layers, let's experiment with different blending modes and see. See also, if you change into screen, despite the fact that the color turns into a lighter color because screen is a lighter blending mode, it still creates the effect that this sort of like part of the kimono is still on the background. Because it's a different color, it's just how the separation works. So remember this trick, especially if you are not a huge fan of lighting and shading, same as me, myself and I. So, but look, I think, see, like exclusion is really nice. It's not a darker tone, it's actually a lighter tone. However, you can see that it's sort of like behind. I prefer so either exclusion or soft light. I quite like soft light because it's just slightly darker but not too much contrast, yet you still see this separation going on. And I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. So on top of this layer, I'm gonna create a new one. And this is gonna be underneath this layer. So when we apply the pattern, it will only apply to this layer, but not to this part. So let's see what pattern I would like to use on the very top. So I think on the very top, I'm gonna try and use this beautiful Japanese cranes, which I'm a big fan of. Now here comes the area of creative experiments, guys. Experiment as much as you can, do whatever you fancy. Just remember, certain blending modes are sort of like bringing up darker colors, certain emphasize lighter ones, certain bring the colors up, etc, etc. So depending on the color you choose, the blending mode's gonna give you like different interesting effects. For this particular cranes, I'm gonna choose, because it's like the darkest blue, I'm gonna choose this this sort of like dusty bluish greenish color, which is the fourth from the left on the top row. It's the brush is the OB Living Beings 1, the Japanese cranes, and this is what I'm gonna do. Beautiful. See, I kind of like the effect that you can see a little bit even there, so like on the inside of the fabric. What, like, see, now I'm looking at, I absolutely love it. What do I want to do? Do I want to change the direction of it to see more? I'll leave it like that. Remember, if you saw my stitched bird class, you probably remember that you can do things like this with pattern brushes. You can bring them up, you can reduce the size if you want it a little bit more condensed. But I'm gonna leave this top one just like that, because you see these beautiful birds. And I'm gonna grab the eraser tool. Doesn't really matter what brush, as long as it's not the shader or texturizer. I'm gonna grab this Essential Filler Small, and with the opacity 100%, I'm just gonna rub out, no matter how much I like this overlap, I think I'm just gonna, just to give it a little bit more interest, a little bit more variety of forms, I'm just gonna rub off the overlap on the inside part of the kimono. And let's try and do some little experiments with the blending mode, as I mentioned a few moments ago. So at the moment our cranes are on the normal blending mode, so let's try and see what's gonna happen. See, like, because the color I chose is so light, it's lighter than the background, there is not much going on when you change it to multiply, or there's nothing to be seen even at the darkened blending mode. Linear burn is quite black. But look, when you start like the lighter blending mode, see, the lightened one changes the cranes into just slightly beige color. I think I like that. What do you think? Do you like this? So lighten, I keep it in mind. Screen, color dodge. Color dodge turns them into bright blue, which is lovely as well. Why not? Add lighter color and lighten are quite similar, if not the same. Overlay. I love the overlay blending mode because it gives this delicate effect of the fabric. Soft light, just a little bit brighter. Hard light. Yeah, you see, like, see for yourself. Not a fan of this effect, by the way. Difference, oh, that's quite nice. It makes them almost look golden. Actually, I quite like this, guys. I might actually keep it. Remember, as long as you keep separate layers, going forward, you can still change the blending mode and the different ways of the pattern, like increase the size, etc. Now let's create this silky fabric effect. I'm gonna add another layer on top of the pattern layer, and this, remember, this overlap the inside of our fabrics, it's still sitting on top of the stack. So on this new layer, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab the back to free essential brushes. I'm gonna grab the essential shader, and what I'm gonna do, what it says, I'm gonna create some shade. I don't want to make like black shade, so I'm just gonna take this probably bright blue color and see, like, trying different blending modes, how it's gonna work. I'm gonna immediately change the blending mode to linear burn, because I know that's quite a nice blending mode for colorful things. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna gently move around the edge just a little bit, literally give it the impression that it's slightly shaded, and exactly same in the bottom. You can hopefully see that it's already becoming a little bit more dimensional, a little bit more interesting. See, the bottoms of the birds are in the shade. Gonna add a little bit of shade here. Yeah. And the only thing is basically missing is the highlight. So on a new layer, why new layer? Because highlight, obviously I won't be able to create it on the linear burn blending mode, so I need some lighter mode. Keeping it on normal, still using the essential shader, I'm going to choose some lighter color. I'm not going to take pure white because that's going to be too harsh. I'm going to take this light blue with the opacity reduced to around 50% odd, with the size quite small as well, maybe 3%. What I'm going to do, I'm going to gently put a little bit of highlight in the middle. And see, you get this like shiny silk effect. The fabric is a little bit like buckled like this, or like rounded a little bit, which is fine in my opinion. That's the effect I'm trying to achieve. The only thing is just I'm gonna try and change the blending mode and see what's gonna work best. So at the moment it's a normal, and I'm gonna try like different lighter blending modes. Oh, look at this one. I think this is gorgeous. I think that's actually the one I'm gonna keep, because this like goldenish type elements with this like blue, azure blue shine, like give this nice effect. And that's it, guys. I'm not gonna overthink it. I like it, I love it the way it is, and that's precisely what I'm gonna do with the next two layers. Exactly same way. I might actually group this layer because I just want it out of the way. Go ahead and lock it if you're worried about like accidental deleting it or like drawing on it or something. So next layer, next part I'm gonna work on is this middle part. And what I'm gonna do, exactly the same what I did with the top one. So I'm gonna create a clipping mask. I'm gonna change it to maybe linear burn mode, and the brush I'm gonna use is the Essential Filler brush with 100% opacity, and I'm just gonna grab this blue color. I might actually switch, yeah, you see, like to switch the sketch on to see if I'm doing everything correctly, just to stay in the lines. I'm gonna color in the overlap of this fabric, which is only here in the back. There is nothing here. Let's switch it off. Yeah, see? Now we've got this effect of overlapping, and we're gonna do exactly the same. We're gonna create a new layer in between these two, and let's select our pattern. So this time I would like to use one of the geometric patterns, and I think the stripes are quite interesting to use. And this time the tone is quite medium, I would say, like mid-tone. So it's not too dark, it's not too light, so I can choose whatever I want. So I think I want the pattern to be on the darker side, so darker, in a darker tone than the background of this fabric. So I'm gonna try and put color burn mode in, but going forward I might change my opinion and just change it. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna create this beautiful stripes. Let's see. Yeah, I'm quite happy about that. The reason I decided to choose the stripes, because I wanted to show you another trick, especially if you are a little bit on a more sort of like realistic side of your art. And Procreate doesn't necessarily have to be realistic, but you see what I mean. Our fabric is doing a curve, so it's got this curve motion. However, the stripes are straight, blunt straight, and we want to change the direction slightly, not too much. We're not after anything super realistic, but just to make it a little bit more believable. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to this adjustments icon on the very top left part of the screen of my Procreate interface, and I'm gonna choose the liquify tool. You probably are familiar with that, especially if you're a Photoshop user. The liquify tool has been around for absolute ages, so you can adjust the size, pressure, distortion. I usually use this push function of it, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna push it a little bit up, a little bit down here, basically following the direction of the fabric of our kimono. I think that's all right. It doesn't have to be super neat and realistic. I'm gonna grab the eraser tool and I'm gonna erase, rub this off, like on the overlapping layer, just rubbed that part off. So let's go back to the multiply, or to the blending mode. So at the moment it's color burn. Let's try and experiment. Darken can see, multiply is pretty much the same as color burn. I just think it's maybe a little bit too intense. What do you think? Yeah, when you go to lighten, see, I like screen because it kind of gives it like this nice stripy thing. Overlay makes it a little bit too neon. Not sure I like that. Definitely not hard mix. Difference is too black. Exclusion is interesting. You know what, guys? I think I like screen. I might also remember, if you find the blending effect too intense, you can always adjust the opacity of the layer just to make it slightly more subtle, like this. And same next two steps as we've done on the top one. Next new layer is gonna be linear burn, darker. I'm gonna grab my, back to the essential brushes, I'm gonna grab the essential shader brush. I'm gonna take this probably lightish color, don't want it too harsh, and I'm just gonna go around the edges with the opacity slightly reduced. You don't want it too harsh, too intense. See, like doing that already, I can see that I don't like the blending mode. It's making it like super ultramarine shade, which is obviously you can use if you wish so, but I think color burn even brighter. Multiply. See, multiply is fine for me because like I like the subtlety of the color as opposed to neon brightness. So I did the slight shading on the edges, and now all I need to add is a new layer on the normal mode to start with the same essential shader brush. I'm gonna grab same light blue color, and I'm just gonna draw the middle of it, trying to follow the curve of our kimono. A little bit like smaller diameter of the brush, just in the very middle. Yeah, that's way too intense. So I can already see that the blending mode is gonna need change. Oh, look at that, lighten with this beautiful like rosy purple effect, screen colored dodge. Lighter color, I'm gonna reduce the opacity a little bit of this layer. Look at that, I like that, vivid light. See, it gives this like turquoise effect, which is sort of like unify this layer with the top one. I think that's what I'm gonna keep. Love that. And finally, let's group these elements together to get them out of the way. And the last but not least, the very bottom layer of our kimono. And I'm just gonna speed it up a little bit and do exactly what I did before. That's it, guys. That's our kimono done. That's our cat is done. And in the next chapter, I'm just gonna show you how I prefer to finish off this illustration, adding a little bit of different additional elements. Thank you for watching. See you in the next chapter. Right, so you probably have this feeling right now that this cat has been cut out and plonked in the middle of the bare canvas, and we really sort of need to add something else to make it a little bit more special, a little bit more like a finished illustration. And let's see what can be done. I always emphasize that only flatten your layers, especially when you're doing a commission work for a client, or you're working on a book or whatever. Only flatten your layers when you're 100% sure that you're not gonna want to alternate anything. If there is still like little flicker of a doubt that some changes might still be taking place later on, back the layers up. Because if you go back to a client, for example, and the client says, look, I love your cat, absolutely amazing, but I'm not sure about these birds. Can they be squirrels instead? And she's like, oh, I'm glad I've got just the right brush for that. So you grab your squirrel brushes and you change it, as long as your layers are available, separate layers available to change. See? But once your hard copy is flattened, that's it. You would have to recreate a new layer, work around it. So I probably don't need to tell you, you know it all yourself. So if you feel that the layer stack is getting a little bit messy, what I do sometimes, I go to the gallery, I select my artwork, I duplicate it, and knowing that on this document, the layers are backed up if I want to change them. This one I can flatten and work already on the whole thing behind it. I need to unlock this one because it won't let me flatten. So I'm gonna flatten all the layers except for obviously this one, the very top one. Flatten. That's it. So my cat is flattened now, so I can work on the rest. And the very first thing I would like to do, there are 3 elements we will be adding to this picture, to this illustration, to make sure that it's complete, is first of all the background. That's fun, guys. Honestly, don't get too tense about that. This is like the fun part. You don't really need to overthink anything. So create a new layer and drag it directly behind the cat, because it's going to be sitting on this nice big vignette. And yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to Busy May Free Essential Brushes and choose like literally any brush. Essential Sketch probably not going to work here because it's quite a thin brush. The rest might work. So I suggest that instead of this super fluffy thing we usually use, like texturizer, this time we can use the Essential Filler Big Brush. I'm gonna increase the opacity to 100%, and I'm gonna increase the size so it's big enough, see, to make larger washes, to cover larger areas with the color. And I want this sort of like this fluffy stain. So I don't know if stain is the right word, but this fluffy backdrop behind my cat, I want it to be darker than the cat, because I think that's just the cat is quite light itself, and on the lighter background it sort of like blends in a little bit. So I'm gonna grab this nice plum color. We just accidentally added another color to the palette. It's okay. Let's see. Yep, quite happy with that. I'm gonna create this oval shape and holding my brush, my pencil down a little bit, make this like almost like a portrait frame for my cat. I'm gonna grab the brush and let's switch the cat layer off just to make sure that it's evenly covered with color. Plonk the cat back on, and I might actually just drag it a little bit. Also, I don't want it to look too Victorian, too like portrait-like, so I might grab the freeform select tool and just make a little bit more squished shape. I'm gonna try and experiment with different blending modes. Look how like the more colorful the object is, the more interesting to see how it changes with different blending modes. Yeah, you see the lighter blending modes don't do really much. Oh, some of them are just gorgeous. All right, okay. So I think I want to keep it dark. I think I'll keep it multiply. See, I see like it's a little bit uneven, so I might just grab the essential shader tool and just add a little bit of grain here and there, just to make it slightly a little bit more tidy, so it doesn't look as if it's been done in a rush. I want to clean up the cat a little bit again. You know, guys, obviously if you do a client work, watch for this like little imperfections. This totally need tidied if you work, if it's a commission piece, if you intend to charge for it. So all this sort of like things, they need tidied properly. However, if you're just drawing for fun, for yourself, just because you love doing it, I wouldn't start like rubbing off every single dot you find on the canvas. So yeah, another trick which my usual followers and people who like my art and have seen my previous tutorials, they know already about it, but I'm going to remind you because it's one of my favorite things to do. I'm gonna try and add a little bit more color in here. So I'm gonna grab the select tool, and on the freehand mode, I'm gonna just randomly choose like the organic shape like this, random, no rules around it. And before I do anything else, I'm gonna grab the feather and increase. So basically what it's gonna do, it's going to fluffify the blends, the edges of it. So the edges of the selected shape are not going to be too harsh, but they're going to be blended, they're going to be feathered. And after that, without deselecting anything, I'm going to the adjustments, and I'm going to grab hue saturation section of the menu, and I'm going to play around. See what I'm doing? I'm changing the hue, and the selected area, which is quite nicely blended without any harsh borders, it kind of changes the hue of our color. I quite like the bluish one. I might reduce the saturation of it a little bit. Brightness? No. Oh, look, I like it. I really like it darker. I think I like it like this. And now I can deselect. Yeah, I think that's so dramatic. I absolutely love it. It's not how I did the original piece, but I still think it's quite nice. So that's the background done. Feel free to add other elements. I usually sit with the background for an hour, adding like little scribbles, scratches, little twigs, little leaves, sometimes an insect or two creep in my artwork on the background. So stars is my usual thing, but this time, you know, that's not the point. It is good already the way it is, so I'm just going to leave it like this. Especially the lighter details are going to come on the foreground. So that was number one additional thing. Number two, I'm going to add, you see, like in our sketch, we've got this little pins in our cat's hair. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to reduce the opacity of the sketch. And what's the most solid brush? I think the essential sketch I'm going to grab. And I'm just going to increase the size a little bit. And the color I'm going to use is probably the lightest color. Yeah, quite like that. And I'm just gonna stick a few pins in my cat's hair. Not being too precious. I can always erase some parts. I'm just gonna leave it at 2. Don't want too many pins. I'm gonna grab the essential shader and smudge tool, and I'm just gonna fluffify a little bit of the end of this pin, just so it looks like it's tucked in the hair. I'm not gonna do any lights and shades, but what I might do, I might just grab the same brush and I'm just gonna canvas straight. I'm just gonna add this, you know, like little elements that you can find often on this kind of Japanese, a little bit straighter because the gravity, you know, and all that. So I just want it a little bit more realistic. And a little bit here. And that was a very short second edition. And finally, the third one, I'm just going to create some cherry blossom around our cat to make it like extra Japanese looking. So I'm going to grab the Essential Filler small brush and I'm going to increase the opacity to 100%, and the size, I'm just going to experiment. I want them quite thin, quite delicate, so yeah. So maybe I'm just gonna try and experiment with different colors. I'm gonna go for this black one because it started with dramatic. And what I'm basically gonna do, I'm gonna draw some lines that resemble twigs. So obviously I'm not gonna sit and like paint realistic twigs here, but I'm gonna just draw. And for that, I'm gonna use this motion, see? So, just so they resemble proper twigs. I also like this fluff because it just, there is a resemblance of a Japanese ink there, like you find on ancient Japanese artworks, art pieces, illustrations, especially landscapes. See one twig here, another branch here. I'm not worried about overlapping my cat because, you know, I can always change it. It's not on the same layer. See, like with these motions, I start with a very, very light pressure and then increase the pressure going to the bottom. And maybe another one coming from here. Right. Of course, at the moment it looks a little bit Halloweeny because it's like dead tree twigs, branches. But we're gonna add the actual blossoms, which is gonna make it nice and happy and very Japanese looking. For that, we're gonna create a new layer on the normal blending mode as well. With the same Essential Filler small brush, I might increase maybe the sizes, but to be honest, it's up to you. You can make bigger flowers like this, or you can make them smaller, or what I strongly recommend, make them of different sizes. Make it slightly more interesting. So I'm gonna plonk here a few really large cherry blossom florals. That's literally all I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all. Nothing less, nothing more. Another big one probably here. Like, see yourself where you like them best. And I'm gonna now reduce the brush size and add a little bit smaller ones. Now let's add the centers to the flowers. I suggest that you just do it on the exactly same layer. There is no need to create another layer for that. So I would take this lovely pink, and I'm just gonna draw in the middle of each flower to create this look. See, I think it's already looking pretty good the way it is. It does look like an illustration already, but just to make it a little bit more interesting, I suggest that you do this. You add another layer and change the shade of your floral slightly. Bluer color. Yeah, quite like that. Reduce the size, and with this little motions overlapping the previous flowers, just create a little bit more florals of bluer shade, see, here and there. And because of this variety of color, this effect is created like something actually is going on here, something exciting, something beautiful. And see, the flowers don't all need to be attached to the twigs. They can be easily scattered around, especially you see how like in the cherry blossom, apple blossom, peach blossom season in Japan and everywhere around the world, you have these petals flying in the wind. I think it's so beautiful. It just takes my breath away, to be honest, even thinking about it. Makes me so happy. Yeah, and let's add those centers as well. And maybe on the new layer I would also add this kind of little white dots every here and there, just to look like this petals falling, flying around in the wind. Some of them might be a little bit bigger, some of them will be a little bit smaller. And that's basically it, guys. Here is our Japanese cat. It's created. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for doing this tutorial with me. I hope you've created a lovely cat or whatever animal you prefer to create. And please share your artwork. If you tag me on Instagram at my_busy_me, that would be amazing. But also just share your art with the world. That's the best reward I can ask for. Thank you so much, guys. If you have questions, if you have reviews for this tutorial, please comment down below, and see you next time. Bye.